Welcome to the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre Seminars. I'm Sandra Gilman, Chairman of the Board of the Wing, and this is Doug Leeds, our President. We've been presenting these very special programs for 25 years with our partners, CUNY TV, and we've expanded them this year thanks to support from the Annenberg Foundation.
These seminars play an important role in the Wing's efforts to provide educational programs for people interested in theater. We are now also broadcasting a new weekly radio show called Downstage Center on XM Satellite Radio. On these shows, we also bring conversations with theater artists both on stage and behind the scenes to listeners across America. To further support our educational efforts, the American Theatre Wing each year provides grants and scholarships to New York theaters and theater students. All of our educational and media programs, including these seminars, are available free on demand from our website, www.americantheaterwing.org.
The Wing founded the Tony Awards 60 years ago, and we're continuing to present them with the League of American Theaters and Producers. We're fortunate enough to have 3 greatly admired female performers working on the stage today. We will hear about their individual experiences that brought them to this moment in their careers.
We thank you for joining us, and we're very pleased to now introduce our moderator, reporter and critic, Pia Lindstrom.
We are so very fortunate to have 3 of the most incredibly talented actresses with us today. And I'm so happy to be able to introduce Kathleen Chalfant, who of course we know from Wit and from Angels in America and so many wonderful productions. Brenda Blethyn from London, one of the great actresses of the English stage and now the American stage. And Randy Graff, who has been with us for a long time here in New York. Many things you've done. Angels in America, a Tony Award. And
City of Angels.
City of Angels. That's Angels in America. A lot of angels here coming around. So welcome all. I know how you get to Carnegie Hall. We've heard about that. Practice, practice, practice. I'd like to know how you got to Broadway, and I'd like to start with you, Kathleen, because you're from San Francisco.
I am.
So how did you get from San Francisco to Broadway?
I took the long way around, actually. I was born in San Francisco and grew up in Oakland and went to school in Palo Alto at Stanford. And then I got married right away. And we went to Europe, my husband and I. And I'd always meant, all the time, I always meant to be an actress, but I took a sort of sidestep when I was at Stanford and studied classical Greek. And I was on my way to graduate school, and then I met my husband, and my husband said, I said, you know, I don't really want to teach Greek to prep school kids. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I always thought I wanted to be an actress. And he said, why don't you do that? And I said, oh, what an idea. So I dropped out of graduate school and began to study acting in San Francisco, and then we got married and lived in Spain and had a baby, and then lived in Italy, and I studied acting in Italian, which was great, with a wonderful teacher.
That is the long way.
It is the long way.
Long way.
Alessandro Fersen. And then we finally moved to New York, and I began. We lived in Woodstock for a little while, and our second child was born during a production of Major Barbara, in which I was playing Barbara.
So you started a little bit later than in your life.
I did. I came to New York. I was 28 when I came to New York. I actually interviewed with Win Handman on my 28th birthday, which was January 14th.
And Brenda, did you start very
I'm
young?
a late starter.
Oh, you're a late starter too?
I didn't go to drama school till I was nearly 28.
Ah,
yeah.
And they let you in?
They let me in, yeah. It's a mystery to me too.
Well, what were you doing before?
I worked, when I left school, I went to commercial college and I learned shorthand typing, bookkeeping and all those sorts of things. I worked in all sorts of places, a bank in London, British Rail. But I did a little bit of amateur dramatics, and people kept saying to me, do you know, I think you're good enough to be a professional. And I thought it was the most ridiculous, absurd, irresponsible idea. I never, to give up my good job and become an actress. but people said it quite often, and I thought, well, I wonder. And I was 27, I thought, I might spend the rest of my life wondering about this unless I go and check it out. So I applied to Guildford School of Acting, which was quite near to where I lived. And lo and behold, they gave me a place. But I didn't tell my family because they'd have thought I was off my rocker. So I'd taken leave of my senses. So I waited until I thought I had made the right decision, and I was doing okay at drama school, and I told my mum and dad, and they were thrilled for me because I was happy. They just wanted me to be happy. They didn't mind what I did, as long as it was legal. In fact, my mum said to me one day, Brenda, if you do your acting all day long, when do you earn your money? I said, they pay me, Ma. She said, do they? Have they got any more jobs up there?
And then they got to see you at the National Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company and all of those things. I mean, you did so many wonderful things.
Yeah, they were over the moon. In fact, I was at the National Theatre in London when it opened, and so I was in all not all the early plays, because there was 3 theatres, but I was actually in the Tamburlaine the Great. I only had one line, but
you were there.
I was in it, yes.
Brandy, did you start very young, or did you?
Well, if you ask my father, he said I've been performing since I've been 3. But
you're from Brooklyn.
I'm from Brooklyn.
So it wasn't so far for you to get to Broadway.
Far.
You're the closest one to Broadway.
I grew up in Brooklyn, and then we moved to Staten Island when I was 15, and then when I graduated college, I moved into Manhattan. But I think it was always around my family. I don't think I chose it, I think it kind of chose me, because there's always been music in my family. My grandmother sang, my Uncle Jerry, still at 86 years old, writes and plays piano beautifully, and my cousins are actors. So it was always kind of around. But I don't think I got serious about it until I was in college, but I have girlfriends from Brooklyn who I still keep in touch with, who all popped up during Fiddler. It was great. Fiddler brought everybody back.
Oh, it was wonderful. I saw Fiddler.
Oh,
You're wonderful.
Thank you. But all the old girlfriends from Brooklyn showed up, and one friend said, well, you told me you wanted to be Carol Burnett when you were in the 6th grade. And I don't remember any of this stuff, but it was just always around. And in college, I majored in speech and theater and minored in education because my parents wanted me to have something to fall back on. And it was there that I met a gentleman named Milton Lyon, who passed away about 8 years ago, but he really became a mentor for me and taught me that when you sing, you have to act. I learned that very early in college. And Milton, when I graduated college, Milton was directing a production of Pins and Needles, which is this musical about the Garment Workers Union, written by Harold Rome, at the old Roundabout Theater when it was on 23rd Street.
In the market.
When it was the old movie theater on 23rd Street. And I was living in the city, and I didn't have any representation or anything like that, and I just called Milton up and I said, can I try out for your show? And he said yes, and I auditioned, and my Uncle Jerry played my audition for me, and he hired me, and I got my agent at that point, who was coming to see one of his other clients in the show, so it all kind of took off from there, but it really was a connection that I made in college that helped me take off.
So nobody discouraged any of you, really? It sounds like all of you were...
No, it seemed in my family, as in Brenda's, it seemed, and not like Randy's, it seemed not practical.
That's right.
And then I found out the same thing afterward, that my parents were all excited and happy that I'd done it. And I have to say that I had then, and still have, because we've now been married for 38 years, the unequivocal support of my husband.
Well, I guess that would have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You're married and
No, I'm not, but I've been with my partner for 30 years. I can't make up my mind about it.
Take your time.
If it's working, don't.
No, I mean, because that is
It's
a problem.
real support,
I have a friend
yeah.
of mine who's an actress, and I keep inviting her to parties. She can never come. I can never see her. She's always working. Eventually, you give up on friendship. Don't you have trouble with family and friends?
Yeah.
keeping
It's
them going?
difficult.
Yeah, well, especially when you're doing 8 shows a week, there's
It's
no
difficult.
time to see anybody.
Yeah.
And you
But if you've
can't.
got real friends, you know, my best friend in London, I don't think I've seen for about 10 years.
Well, that's-
But if I saw her now, it was as if I saw her yesterday.
Yeah.
It's
For you, but maybe not for her.
Oh, no,
Because
it's-
I'm
it's
the
the
friend,
same.
and so I always feel, gosh, I'm
No.
missing out on something here.
It's
But
just
you
the
really
same for
have
her.
to have that tunnel vision, I guess.
And you
that-
can't have, it's interesting, you can't have people to dinner, which is an odd thing. We live in a house, but we own a house, it's a family house, and so Henry and I live on the top, and our cousin, Henry's cousin and his wife live underneath us, and he's a painter and she's a writer. And Charlie and Michelle have people to dinner all the time. And I think, oh, I should do that, but you realize there are odd things that happen to your life that you don't expect.
I sometimes envy that, you know, because we don't have time, because our work takes place when everyone else is sitting down for a
Yes.
family meal
Yes.
or out to the theatre to enjoy themselves. We're working. And I sometimes envy that. Being able to do it, but not all the time. Sometimes I'm glad that, you know,
That your life would...
yeah, I prefer what I'm doing.
Tell me a little bit about auditioning. You mentioned a rather pleasant experience when you auditioned, but isn't that very awkward and difficult to go to auditions?
Yes.
Do you all like them?
It's
I mean,
always
is this
kind of
something you look forward to and
nerve-wracking.
you say, I get to...
I'm not very good at them.
I think it's very seldom that you ever hear anyone say that they are good at them. There are some people who say they love to do them, but I think they're delusional.
I think it was Tyne Daly said that she loves to go to auditions because it's an opportunity to act. I thought, well, that sounds good. I can't...
I was wondering if, as we are speaking here of women in this profession, can we call you actresses? I know that sometimes you have to say actor now.
We've all
so
been
I don't
calling
know.
ourselves
I don't
actresses.
want to be politically incorrect here, call you actresses. If you're an
care about
actor.
that.
You don't
Doesn't
know. Good. Okay,
Doesn't matter.
actresses.
Good
I
or
like
bad
I
is
like
the important part.
yeah. So I wonder if there's if any of you have experienced an expectation, as you are women, what you're supposed to be on stage when you arrive at an audition. Or would it be exactly the same for men? The reason I'm thinking of it is very often you think of women's roles. There's the good girl, the bad girl, you know, the tart, the matron, the society woman, the witch, the crazy woman in the attic. I don't know. There's a kind of group there. Do you feel that there's a pressure to be a certain type?
I think what I've learned is that it's just best to be yourself, that you can't second guess what they're looking for, and to just present who you are. And you have no control over whether or not you're the right type or not. I read this book early on, Michael Shurtleff's How to Audition. Do you know this book?
No,
I think
I
it's still out there. He used to be a casting director. I don't
Yes,
know if
he
he's
did,
doing it
yeah.
anymore. But he talked a lot about all the things as an actor that is just out of your control. And I gave the, oh, I'm going off on a whole tangent here, but it's a cute story. I gave, my dad is a retired salesman, so he knows about selling. He knows about product and he knows about selling. And when I first got into the business, I said, Dad, you have to read this book, because this is a book about my business. And he read the book, and I had an audition one week, and I told him that, he said, so how'd you do? Did you get a call back? And I said, no, I didn't get a call back. And he said, well, I guess you had the wrong color suit on. I thought he got it.
Yeah.
He got it. So you can't second guess them ever. You just have to be who you are and present who you are, and they either want that quality or they don't. That's just been my experience.
The same experience?
I think it's true, and it's the most difficult thing to convince yourself of.
Yeah.
Because it goes on, and you keep saying, well, if I'd only, or maybe I could have. But it doesn't seem to be true. If you do what you can do in the best possible way, it's your best chance.
Right.
And sometimes people, because I've been on both sides of the casting table, I was about to say couch. No.
We can talk about that one.
And sometimes someone surprises you because they aren't anything like the person that you had in mind, but they're the best person who's come in. An example of that, a wonderful example of that, was in Wit, actually. Paola Pizzi, who ended up playing the nurse, who was written as an Irish person. And Paola is an Italian person from Argentina.
She's beautiful. She lives in my building.
So beautiful, and about to have a baby. Too.
Yes.
Actually, Paola's going to have a baby. But I'd been cast, and they asked me to be there for the casting for all the other parts. And we saw a whole bunch of people, all wonderful people, many of them Irish, many of them who looked exactly like what you imagined the part to be. And Paola came in. And it happened that it was a day when you went to work with a relative, and my niece, for some reason, decided that she was going to come to work with me. So she came to work with me that day. And she was there. She was about 16, and so she watched the audition. And every single person in the room said, well, it has to be Paola. Couldn't be anybody else. And so Paola became Susie, and it did an amazing thing. It changed the part. So Susie, the name of the character is, I think, Susie Monahan, is always has been played. Audra McDonald played her in the TV thing, so it made the part free in some way. It was I hadn't thought about that for a long time, but that's a great example of what can happen in an audition, and you just go and do who you are.
I remember reading Hume Cronin saying that he had gone to an audition and they said to him, "You don't look like anybody." He always said the problem was he was so plain. So I was thinking that maybe one has to, do something to get attention.
Yeah, some people do that.
You don't. You don't. No, you just. Okay.
I just turn up as me. It's sometimes quite hard, I suppose, if the casting person or the director hasn't got a clue who you are and doesn't know your work. I mean, I would never get any job on that, and usually I don't if that is the case. But it's I sometimes talk to students at my old drama school, and they get despondent if they haven't got an audition. But it's not always if you're not talented enough to play the part, or you're not right. They might already have cast somebody the same height as you, the same color eyes as you, same color hair as you, same accent as you, who and they don't want two people like that. It's not always that you're not capable and would not be good playing the part. There are other things taken into consideration too. So,
what's the best part of the rehearsal period?
Rehearsal.
Yeah.
Just rehearsal.
Just rehearsal.
yeah.
It's my favorite, and I when I tell my husband this, I say, honey, I love you, but please don't take it personally. The rehearsal room is my favorite room in the world. When it's the right group of people and the right project, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. We had the most incredible rehearsal process for Fiddler.
For Fiddler?
Yeah, because they did all kinds of stuff to make us feel like a community, and we started out. And the first day of rehearsal, I thought, oh no, I'm not into this at all. But we did these massages where we would find a partner and massage your partner, and then your partner would massage you. But it really just gave you a chance. And sometimes it made me a little self-conscious if I was with
Who was your partner?
everybody.
You ended up going around the whole
Go around
company.
the whole company, and sometimes I was a little intimidated if it was some gorgeous man who was rubbing my body. I would be a little self-conscious about that, but you know what? Eventually I got into it. And that was just to make us feel relaxed and comfortable around each other. And then we did these Jewish folk dancing. We'd start every morning with massage, vocal warm-up, and Jewish folk dancing, and it was so wonderful, and it created such a bond and such a family and such a community within the company. And then from there we went on to tackle the text. But I just love the creative process. I live for that. I love that, and that's why I love rehearsal.
Brenda, what is the best part of rehearsal for you?
I agree. Rehearsing is just in discovering, and finding working bits out and finding something new each day. It's wonderful. It's very edifying. But just prior to the read-through on the first day, I am petrified. I should be in hospital. I am so scared. Because you always imagine they're going to find out any minute they've made a dreadful
Yeah.
mistake.
Oh my
Is
God,
it the same
yes,
with you?
yes.
I don't know. And do you have the thing where everybody else is wonderful?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why am I in this play?
First read-through is
and
the
then
hardest.
after the read-through, there's like a little bit of a lull while everybody chats to each other, but the director and the producers are huddled somewhere, and they're we got to get on to central casting.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
thinking,
We're gonna get rid of
what we're
her.
going to do with her? We're going to get rid of her. Terrible paranoia. And it's the same before going on in a performance. Every single time, I'm petrified.
Do you have a lot of stage fright?
I'm petrified. Once I'm on, I
really?
step on, I'm fine. But before going on, it's awful.
Is there anything that you do beforehand to try and relax yourself?
Just before curtain up, this is going to sound silly, but I don't even know. I'm not even going to say that.
Yes, tell us.
Well, I'm right in the center of the curtain on stage, and I offer myself like an offering to the audience, and I'm going to do my best, and I can't do any more than that.
Right.
So,
That's good.
and it's just to center myself and to stop wasting energy fretting. That's the only reason I do that.
What do you do with stage fright, Kathleen?
It's odd. I don't. It's almost gone now. I had a long period of 6 or 7 years when I thought I would have to stop because it was so awful. It was a kind of phobia, you know, and I could feel it. I would be fine, and it would start in the middle of rehearsal, and then go on for a long time, and it was awful. It's worse when it starts in rehearsal because it means you can't work, because it's when the work happens, and it would start, I could feel it, start at the bottom of my feet and crawl up and stop about here, and I could just barely talk. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was seeing a therapist at the time, and she had among her clients a lot of people who were pilots and things, people who flew and all. And I was the only person in the theater that she'd ever had up to that time, and I was explaining that it was a problem. She said, "Oh, I understand, this is a practical problem, isn't it? It gets in your way." And she said, "You would be surprised how many pilots have fear of flying."
Oh, gosh. It's not reassuring.
Surprise and alarm. And so she said, I have a, you know, obviously there are deep underlying causes, and perhaps we'll dig them up, or perhaps we won't, but obviously. So she said, it's quite a simple thing, but it's quite difficult to do. So you can't think about it. You can't give it brain room, in a way. And I do this because I always thought of it as this terror would begin to creep across your eyes as though they were creeping onto the screen, and you have to push it away by any active thinking about anything. Working, you know, if you read the text, don't think about it, because terror is a little bit like a wound. You know how you always pick in a way to sort of feel if you're alive, and it's very dangerous, especially phobic terror, like it just pull you down. And so it's gone away, and the only time now that I'm frightened is during the judging, you know, during the time when the critics come. Because it seems it seems that there's so much hanging on it.
Is it fear of being a failure, or fear of just getting it wrong?
It actually is fear of letting down the enterprise. You know, everybody's worked so hard, and you have to work. The great secret is you have to work just as hard to do it badly as you do to do it well. Nobody sets out to do it badly or to fail. And there's so much work, and it all seems to hang on this one night.
And even if you say, I don't want to know when he's out there, you always wind up,
wonder if somebody whispers.
Or you know after it's happened. And so the whole period of the judging is I find it a difficult time to work.
Yeah.
So I have to do something
It's almost
like what
like
Brenda
auditioning
did.
again,
Yes, it is
isn't
an
it?
audition.
It's an audition for the
You have to
critics.
sing as well.
Oh, that's the worst.
When talking, it's already hard enough.
That's just the worst. And
What do you do when you have to go out and sing and your throat is closing up?
I've had some really embarrassing moments with singing and clamming up because you get locked, so you can't breathe as well, and then you get dry. And I have a voice teacher who I check in with from time to time. She said a great thing to me. She said, yes, you're going to get nervous, but just know that it's not going to get in your way. And just having that little mantra inside my mind, saying it's not, okay, I'm nervous, but it's not going to get in my way. It's not going to get in my way. And just remember to breathe. When I remember to breathe, I can sing. And I don't get nervous singing when I'm in the run of a show, but if I have a concert or a benefit, when it's just one of those one-shot deals where you're just shot out of a cannon, I get terribly nervous for those things, and my heart starts racing. And as long as I remember to breathe and take a good breath before a phrase, I'm okay. But it's
Now, what
really
about
hard.
just physically? I was reading about some actors that drink throat coat, and they're drinking all these things backstage and taking pills. Do you have some
I have all
regimen that
kinds.
you
I have all kinds
would
of.
like to divulge? Some of these things.
One thing that I will tell you is that any of those eucalyptus things are terrible for you because they just dry you out. And if you have to sing, or not even singing, just speaking, anything, there's a little lozenge, and it tastes awful, but it's the best thing for you. It's the slippery elm.
Oh,
Do you
slippery
know about
elm, I know.
Slippery elm lozenges.
Yes, and they just taste awful.
Awful. You can get them cherry flavored or mandarin orange flavored. But they still taste terrible. You get them in the health food store. There's a big
Slippery elm? Slippery elm?
It's
Is
an
that-
herb, and it's a natural lubricator. So it just and I have them. I keep them in the back during the show.
While you're singing?
If I'm having some vocal problems, I just kind of let it live like right there,
That's very dangerous.
and it just melts.
Could just come
But it's-
bursting out suddenly.
Well, one night I choked in the middle of "Do You Love Me," and I couldn't sing. I couldn't sing it. I just was choking, so I had to kind of talk it. And our conductor, Kevin, thought that I had choked on a lozenge, and it was the tuna fish sandwich that I had at intermission.
That's
But you have to-
a little known hazard.
Tuna fish or eating?
Eating anything.
Joking, yeah.
Eating intermission.
In Night Mother, I have to eat a snowball right at the curtain up. First thing in the play is Mama eating a cake, and a couple of times I've inhaled crumbs, and my voice like try to carry on.
Terrible.
And it all
Unfortunately, it's a practical set, so I went
You can
right
go
to
and
the
get
sink
do you
and
have
got a
water
drink
and
of water.
stuff? Yeah.
Yes.
And do you all do things like body works and relaxation techniques and massages, or you don't?
I should do. You think of all the things that you
I've heard
should
about
do.
singers particularly who have to do a lot of, well, I don't know, relaxation of all of the muscles.
Yeah, I do.
Throat and back. And
Yeah, but you also have to do things to get your body up because you need your whole body when you sing. So I find push-ups are really good.
push-ups before you go on stage? You're kidding.
10 of them.
You're back.
Girl push-ups.
I'm impressed.
Girl push-ups.
Girl push-ups. What, you're doing that backstage in your costume? Well, that helps you not think about your throat, at least you think about your arms. Do you have some ritual before you go out on stage?
I don't, and I keep thinking I ought to. What I've discovered is that it works best. It's some odd combination of complete relaxation and having every nerve ending in your body ready, so that if you do the first too well, then nothing much is happening when you go out. And if you do the second too well, then you're just taken over by nervous energy. When it's best, it's complete relaxation, and it's a form, and the audience. It's why I said I only get stage fright or something like it during the judging, because the audience always seems the purpose of it. The play doesn't really exist unless the audience is there to see it, and that's really true. And so it's wonderful to go out to the audience because it's going to be finished. You'll find out whether it's working or not. But the judging is something different. The judging is an audition.
How important is the concentration on the other actors? Does that not help sometimes to forget about your own stage fright? If you really,
If you
can
Absolutely.
really concentrate.
If you listen, if
So you
you
can't
just
be so
listen.
relaxed.
Yeah.
This is the balancing
Well,
trick
it's-
in there.
it's-
Because if you get too relaxed, you're not concentrating.
It's active relaxation. It's something. It's not. It's when you first begin. You always think when you begin acting, you always think that all that kind of terror that you feel is useful to you. That it's the energy, it's the engine that's fueling the work somehow, and that you need to have that. And I've discovered that it isn't useful. What is useful is, it sounds woo-woo too, it's just being completely alive. And what you say is very important, because if you get lost not the lines, but lost in the line of the play, the best place to go is into your partner. And then the two of you can find the play again, or however many of you there are on the stage.
Do you ever lose your place? Have you ever lost your place? Speaking of...
Not really.
No, you-
No. Once I'm on stage, I'm not frightened at all.
Oh, okay.
No.
So you-
I just like to be there.
The play you're in now, Night Mother, I mean, that is a very hard work because it's so difficult, that part. Do you take that with you?
When I leave?
Yes or no? You can leave that.
I'm the opposite of a method actor. I look at my characters totally objectively. It's her, it's not me. And I can talk about her till the cows come. Once that curtain comes down, I'm Brenda, lucky enough to be working on Broadway, and I'm ready to party.
Is this the British education?
Aren't you ready to eat? Aren't you ravenous?
Have a beer or something. No, that's her. That's not me. In fact, going back to what you just said about talking to the other person on the stage, somebody once asked me, if you're working in a studio, not on stage, do you talk, rather like here, do you talk to the camera or to the audience? Who do you perform to? You perform to the person you're playing with, who you want to hear. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
If this was a drama, a play, you talk to the other person and they'll get it.
But if you
the
talk to the other
message is
person
going-
and your head is in the wrong place, we can't hear, so you must have some...
but the
guide
intent
that we're-
is still to
the
the
intent-
other
the
actor.
intent.
There's another technique to embrace that, but the intent has to be directed to whom you are talking.
Right. Of course, the skills needed today are a little bit different. I was thinking everyone is mic'd on stage now, practically, so you don't need to have that vocal projection to the balcony, do you, in some of these plays?
I've never been mic'd.
You've never been mic'd?
No.
Aren't you mic'd?
Well, there's an orchestra. They have to.
But I've seen straight plays where they are too.
I've never been mic'd.
Never been.
Okay, good. So you're doing it the old-fashioned way. You've got to
only,
speak up.
only in the park. In the park to talk over the airplanes, but
Because
not.
it's becoming, quite obvious that many people, particularly if they're screen actors who come in and haven't had that training, that the
I don't think I would like it. I
No.
wouldn't like that at all.
Because it's a mediation somehow.
Well, it has a slightly tinny sound. It has that slightly different sound.
I wonder how different it would be if you were mic'd. If one spoke naturally on stage in a big theatre, there's something to be said. If you can't see what's happening properly, you can't hear as well either. And on a stage, you naturally use your body in such a way so that it invites everybody in, not in a false way, but there is just a way of doing it that embraces everybody. I think if it was more naturalistic, you'd lose that as well.
Because you have to fill the space. It depends on the size of the theater. For instance, the play I'm doing now was originally done in what's called the Little Theater at the Kennedy
10
Center,
by
but
10.
it's 5 by 10.
5 by
Only
10.
five. Only five.
On my plays is 5 by 10.
23 hours long. 5.
5 by 10.
We started doing it
Tennessee
in
Williams.
in the Terrace Theater at the Kennedy Center, which everyone says is the little theater because it doesn't have 5,000 seats. It had 600 or 800 seats, and it's a deep, long, deep theater. And now we're doing it in the tiny little, the smallest theater at the Manhattan Theater Club, which seats 170 people, and we were doing it at full-on proscenium there, and now it's stadium seating, people on 3 sides, and it's very different. And so you had to make it had to reach to the back of the Terrace Theater there, and here it has to be appropriate to this stage, which is about the size of this stage, and the whole theater, it's about the size of this room, back to where the last people are sitting.
So you
here.
play it smaller.
You don't consciously do it, but I think what Brenda said is true. Your body, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You shrink or expand to fill the space.
And then you should be able to play any scene anywhere in an elevator, or if the heart of the scene is right, and if it's truthful, you can play it anywhere. Who says it has to be in a living room? It could be in a deep end of a swimming pool. But if the heart and the truth of it is the same, and the intent is the same, so it could be, should be able to play it anywhere. Yeah. Should be able to stand up to close scrutiny wherever it is played.
Let's talk a little bit about training. You studied with Sandy Meisner, is that?
No, I studied with Wynn Handman, which was kind of like studying with Sandy Meisner. Wynn was his I guess, his disciple
so
in a way, though they were almost contemporaries. The wonderful thing about Sandy Meisner and about Wynn's training was that it was very practical. So he said, whatever works. He didn't necessarily want to know what it was that you were doing, but if it worked, that was fine. And if you fooled him by not doing anything but just playing pretend, that was okay too. And there was a wonderful story that somebody told, and maybe Wynn probably told the story about Sandy Meisner, who a student said, "Now, Mr. Meisner, I know you're really supposed to cry, but what happens if you can't actually cry?" And he said, "Well, you turn your back and shake your shoulders."
Yeah.
That's very good.
I do that.
Yeah. Because the audience hasn't come to see you do it badly. The audience has come to have the story told.
Yes.
And you have to use whatever you can bring to telling the story to do it.
Well, I guess the art is making the audience cry, not having the actor cry.
Yes, usually better not to cry.
Yes, that would be the translating it.
Yeah.
But did you find it useful to you? Because there are some people who say, like I read that David Mamet said most acting teachers are frauds.
I've found Wynn's training invaluable. And I keep running into, I'm actually in the play now, David Rashi's in the play, and David and I were in Wynn's class together. He was a wonderful, wonderful teacher because he had a wonderful eye, so that he could tell when it was being done well or badly, and he also had great taste. So it was, I've been very lucky, and the man I studied with in Italy, Alessandro Fersen, had the same gifts, and they both came out of the kind of method, which is out of Stanislavski, and Stanislavski came from as a corrective to, but not an obliteration of classical theater technique. So it didn't mean that you were, it wasn't naturalism. It was true, which is different from naturalism, I think.
Brenda, your training would have been classical, perhaps.
I didn't do much Shakespeare, for sure. I'm one of those people who is a little bit scared of it. I have done Shakespeare at the National Theatre and the BBC. In fact, the first Shakespeare I did at the BBC, I played Cordelia in King Lear, directed by Jonathan Miller. And it was I enjoyed every minute of it because I thought I was learning something. But then I got very, very nervous when it was time to be transmitted. And the day after, I was just so embarrassed for expecting people to hate it. And I was just walking across Waterloo Bridge, and I could see coming in the other direction a critic. And I thought, oh no, what if he seen last night? Anyway, he bounded across the street, and he said to me, Miss Blethyn, oh, I saw King Lear last night. I thought you were wonderful. I said, oh, thank you. And I was so proud. He says, yes, you played it exactly as I thought it should be played, like a chip off the old block. I said, oh, this is wonderful. And then he said, technically, you've got some way to go.
What does that mean? I loved it, but...
So I was totally deflated. What does that mean?
I don't know. It doesn't mean anything. The training you had, though, was you mentioned the school
the
before.
Guildford School of
Acting,
did they
yes. Do Stanislavski method, or did they do They did another.
No, it's much better now, and I think they probably do now. But then it was in its early stages, and they concentrated mostly on dance. Actually, it's the best, I think, probably in Europe, musical theatre school. There is, but I was on the acting course, and I didn't do the full term, as it happens. I was the oldest one there, and sometimes I was asked to take a little class or two, and I thought, well, I'm not learning anything here doing this, because most of the other students were 18, 19, 20, and I was offered a job with the Bubble Theatre Company, and that's a company that tours the London boroughs in a big tent. And they would generally go to boroughs that didn't have theatre. And some of them did, and some were wealthy boroughs, and some were not. And depending on where we went, was reflected in the ticket price. And we did 3 plays, an improvised play called The London Pub Show, Under Milkwood, and Jack the Ripper musical, believe it or not. But, and I did that for 6 months, and I learned more there. But from doing that, I then went to the National Theatre, where I had, I would say, most of my training.
And for you found it useful? All the training that they gave you at the National?
Well, it wasn't. It was just working.
There are people, yes.
I was the first one to come up through the ranks.
People who say
at the
that you
National
can't
Theatre.
teach this, and that it's, you either know how to do it or you don't. What was your experience? Did you find teachers
I've had
useful?
2 really wonderful teachers. I actually, my first teacher, I think, shared a studio with Win Handman. His name was Richard Edelman. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was all Meisner technique. And then another teacher who's still teaching at a studio in Carnegie Hall, his name is Freddie Karaman.
Oh, Freddie used to teach with Win.
With Win, so it's all from the same
It's all the
school.
same.
And Freddie Karaman, in my mind, is I never studied with Win, but I've heard great things about him. But Freddie is just, I think he's an amazing teacher. And I always thought that I was a pretty good listener on stage, and I didn't really learn what listening was about until I worked with Fred Karaman. But I have a question for you ladies. You're doing a very emotional play right now, and I've seen you do great emotional work before. Don't you find having to get it up and go to those places 8 times a week is exhausting? And on those nights where you just don't want to go there, which what happens to you? People, I mean,
That
you
hasn't
do it.
happened.
It hasn't.
Yeah, no.
Not yet.
It takes as much to play that part as any part to get it right for me. It's wonderful to hear people laugh, so it's uplifting to be playing in a comedy, but to be as honest doing that, to get that right, takes as much concentration as doing that, I find. I don't know about Kathleen.
For people who don't know, Night Mother is about suicide.
Yes. It's a mother and a daughter, and at the start of the play, the daughter announces to her mother that tonight she's going to kill herself. Whether she does or not, you have to come see it. But the mother has to find ways of dealing with this news. And there are some very emotional scenes in it. But once the play's over, she's there. I've left her behind.
But do you ever, how long have you been running now?
We've been playing for about 6-7 weeks.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if you'll get to the point that I've gotten to with Fiddler, where it's close to a year now. Excuse me. When you talked about turning your back to the audience and cry, I started to do that because I've just gotten to the point where, oh my God, I don't want to go there right now.
But what is different is from what you're doing now to what you were doing when it first opened?
I wasn't as tired, I think. I think just after doing a 3-hour show 8 times a week for almost a year, I've just kind of hit a bit of a wall. Not every performance, but a couple, maybe twice a week or something like that. It's been feeling that way.
I think that's a real issue because you are expending vast amounts of real physical energy as well as emotional energy, and I think you do get tired. I think there is a reason. The first time I was ever in a play long enough to take a vacation was Angels in America, and it never occurred to me to take a vacation. And then I realized that it actually was a good thing if I were planning to stay, to take whatever, I think it was 2 weeks or something, because I didn't take it when you could take a week.
That's great.
So I took 2 weeks, and I think you really do need to, and there is a time when you should stop in a long run, that when you've done it long enough, because you don't have anything more to give to it then. And sometimes it's difficult to do because it's difficult to give up the part.
So then the technique of keeping things fresh, I've heard actors say that. I never quite knew what it meant, but
well, you do.
How
I mean,
can you do that?
A year is quite a long time to do a play 8 times a week. And it's a very long time to do a musical 8 times a week in which you both have to sing and dance because the physical demands are enormous. I was in Angels in America off and on from the beginning of its development, off and on for 6 years, from the first reading at the New York Theater Workshop in 1988 until I left it on Broadway in 1994, but it wasn't continuous until we came to Broadway, and so we came to Broadway in, I think, 1993, and we did Millennium, and then rehearsed Perestroika, and then we did, so for a while we were doing both plays. So there was always something new going on, and WIT I did off and on for 3 years, 5 different incarnations
another
of it.
one of a person
But a year,
died.
there was a year, a whole 1 year that was continuous from the continuous time we came to New York. But and then I went right to Los Angeles and then to London. And by the time the play closed in London, I was ready to stop playing the play. And there are, the way to do it, to keep it fresh, is just to start every day. You just start as though you've never done it before, but there are limits to how long you can do that.
I will be ready for a holiday. It's a limited run. But the play is an hour and a half only, so it's like telling a joke. The audience haven't seen the play before, and if you tell a joke, you tell it with as much enthusiasm to the person who hasn't heard it before. You want to get the punchline right, so it has to be new the first time, as you know, each time.
Speaking of audiences, do you follow the audience or do you try to lead the audience? Are you listening?
I do either. Well, you have to respond appropriately if there's a big bolt of
They laugh,
laughter.
if they laugh suddenly,
We
does
just
that-
like to ride it. There's just a way that we just know how to do it. It's you can't necessarily be taught that. That's just something that comes with experience.
So you are listening.
You are aware of
You're-
it, yes.
Are you aware of the audience?
You hear
And they're-
every single thing that happens in the audience, and this is a thing I think that audiences don't understand. You can be completely involved in the play, and are, and you know every single piece of cellophane that has been opened. Cellophane should actually be banned from the theater. It shouldn't be. People should unwrap anything they might need to eat or look at or anything at home and have it in a small velvet bag.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and after you've heard the sweet unwrapping, crinkle, 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 and they do it real slowly. And then
And they're
once it
always in the
stops,
first
you're
row.
just waiting for you just know about 5 seconds later you're going to hear.
And you can hear that? Oh, that's terrible. You hear everything?
Or you think it's over. You think it's over. But then people have the sweet in one hand and the cellophane in the other.
Yes.
And what do you do with the
You
cellophane?
move it.
It's very...
That's amazing that you are so tuned to the sound.
Well, Linda Eamon said this once, and it's absolutely true, that a theater is an oral space. It's meant for things to be heard. So it goes both ways. We can hear on the stage as clearly as people in the audience can hear. And you're aware of a kind of general sense of the audience. If people are restive,
You can tell when they're listening.
When
you can
people
really
are listening.
feel when they're
My
listening.
mom, when she came to see me at the National, whenever I came on, I heard, that's her, that's my girl. That one talking now.
And the first time my daughter ever saw me in a play, she was 2 or something, and it was Henry brought her, and she was standing at the back of the theater, and I came on, and she said, "Mom!"
And my mom used to wear whites. She doesn't do it anymore, but she would wear white sleeves, and in the curtain call, she would go like this. She doesn't do that anymore.
But it is a form of, it's a form of, the purpose of it is communication. And so it would be mad to say that you weren't aware of the other person in the conversation, because that's what it is. You're trying to tell the story. So it's a tricky thing, because you also can't always tell in the same way you can in a conversation. You can't always tell whether somebody's getting it or not, because some groups of people feel comfortable and laugh and laugh and laugh, and other groups of people smile fiercely, but you can't hear it.
And then they'll be on their feet at the end.
Yes, and the audience
you're
that you think,
surprised.
the audience.
I think people in the audience, we don't realize you're listening to us. At least I did, until you said it this way. I know you hear people's cell phones going off, but I didn't think that you were...
I mean, you're not consciously trying to hear.
But when I'm in the audience,
I
I saw 12 Angry Men last night, and the audience was so silent, but then they would laugh at odd places.
But and that's wonderful, because you feel the whole audience there, and it's great when people laugh at odd places, because laughter really means understanding. Usually, so it's not that people just laugh at jokes, and it's great when people go, oh,
Yes,
Hear that when they go,
yes.
I remember when I was playing Benefactors, Michael Frayn's play in London, I had a line that I said to another character on the stage, I've put a chicken in the oven for your dinner. And somebody went, oh! And then you heard seats going up.
Oh, how funny.
So she obviously left the chicken in the oven.
Oh, that's very funny. So you hear them weeping sometimes?
Yes.
I mean, you've done these plays.
Yes, lots of weeping. Lots of weeping. You hear weeping. You hear everything. You hear people coughing.
That.
You hear. That's what someone said. Oh, it was Penny. I'm in the play now with Penny Fuller. Penny has all wonderful wonderful stories to tell. And she said, and she remembers them. It remembers things that people have told her, which is a wonderful thing too. So she said that Ralph Richardson was once asked why it was important to do it well. And he said, to stop people coughing.
That's a very interesting that people don't cough when they're listening. Certainly have noticed that.
No.
So that must be a bad sign when you start to hear everybody coughing.
Coughing.
You know it's not going well. What's the worst thing that's happened? Let's talk about the disasters. Have you reached for the gun and it wasn't there? Or the curtain came down, or the missing prop?
When I was doing Les Miserables, I was doing my death scene, and Colm Wilkinson is supposed to come on stage and lift me up off the floor and carry me into my deathbed, and he never came. This is a famous story. I tell it, Colm tells it, Terry Mann tells it, but I was singing
he?
at the end. He was talking to his dresser. He just forgot, and I was at the edge of the stage, and it's a duet, and he never came out. So I would sing my bit, and then Colm was supposed to come in and sing. So I would sing, and then I would just let the music go and pretend, I was delirious then anyway because I was dying, so I was just sort of pretending that I heard the voice, and the conductor and I were just kind of looking at each other, and it was time for me to die, and he still hadn't come out on stage. So I dragged my dying body into my deathbed and finally got into bed, and then I heard this, "Oh, shh," over the loudspeaker, and he realized he was late. They cut him off as he stood, and he finally came on stage, and he embraced me. And he was singing, and he was embracing me. He was saying, "Oh, Fantine, your time is running out." I'm so sorry. In my ear, and that was.
Yeah.
That's bad.
That felt like a week.
That happened to me too. When I was supposed to be, I was in the Passion at the National, in the Cottesloe at the National, and Robert Stevens and myself, he was playing Pontius Pilate, and I was Mrs. Pontius Pilate. Mrs. P. And we had to make this grand entrance on a gantry, looking down onto the audience. It was a promenade performance, and he had this speech for us. This is, "Lo, Pilate am I, proved prince of great pride," blah, 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 blah. And then I had a speech, "I am Dame Precious Percola, a princess is the prize." But he wasn't there. So I thought, well, I'll do his speech. So I said, "Lo, Pilate lives here, approved prince." And then I did my speech, and then I did the rest of his bit, and he still wasn't there. But then the scene continued where we were supposed to start kissing. And I turned to the band leader behind me, John Towns. I said, what shall I do? He said, "Improvise." So I thought, there's only one thing to do. I turned to the audience. I said, "I'm terribly sorry. I'm afraid my pilot's gone out."
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great.
At which point, Robert came on. He'd got tangled on a door handle. He had this big cape on, and he couldn't free himself. And I said, "Oh, shall we start again?" They said, "Oh, yes, please." So that was all right, but terribly embarrassing.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
That was a great line, though. That you
That's
had.
very, very good.
I didn't even know it was funny when I started the sentence. And another time in the same show, I had to go and find Malchus, who'd had his ear chopped off. The soldiers had captured Jesus. And,
The Garden of Gethsemane, that always baffling picture where there's...
And I couldn't find him because there was 1,000 people in this, and it was a promenade, and I was going through the crowd. I simply couldn't find him. And so I went back to the soldiers. I said, "Well, I can't find him, but if he had been here, he'd have said this." And I did his part. And then I'd have said, but the lines were almost identical. So it was... Anyway, it was embarrassing.
Live theater. Audiences love that, though.
Yes, of course, we love the stories, too.
That just happened.
Do you have a story?
Well, this story just happened a week ago.
No.
Yeah. There are these 5 one-act plays of Tennessee Williams, and in one of them, I am a wife with a philandering husband, and this very handsome young man comes much younger man, Robbie Sella actually, comes to try to take me away because he's fallen in love with me. And in the play, I don't go with him. And the audience, about half the audience always says, well, why didn't you go? Why didn't you go? But I stay. But the other night, at the moment when when the young man says, well, I won't leave unless you go with me, at that moment, my husband, David Brashy, is supposed to be talking to the elevator boy in the hall. So Robbie said, I won't go. And there was a great silence, and I was at the door. It was one of those moments where I was at the doorknob. And if I had had any gumption whatsoever, I'd have said, well, hell, let's go. But I didn't do that. So I listened, and it's a tiny little theater. David couldn't have been very far away. I didn't know where he was. So I said, oh, but you have to go, but you have to go. Josie will be here any minute now. And still no David. Oh, no. I'm sure he's coming. I'm sure he's coming.
Did you say that very loudly?
By that time, I was an inch away from leaving with the young man. But next time, I'm leaving with the young man. It's going to happen.
Of course we love all those stories because that is the difference.
And you know, and you don't believe it's going to happen. When it's happening, you think, this can't be happening. This isn't really true. And then it's funny.
Now, I've also heard about actors' nightmares. I've read that Vanessa Redgrave said she repeatedly had this nightmare, that she was coming out in a play and she didn't know what the play was. It was another play. She's in another, they're saying other lines, and she said it's like a recurrent nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
Do you all have recurrent nightmares?
Yes, and quite often you're...
Same one?
Yeah.
No, you have
or
that...
you turn up at the wrong theater. Yeah.
And you can't find, and you aren't, and quite often you're naked, which is worse. I'm quite often naked.
At the wrong theater as well.
At the wrong theater.
That's because you were naked.
No, I know. I have to give it up.
It's coming back to you.
Yes, right. I can't imagine what I was thinking of. So you don't have the costume, and you know, my version of it is I know there's a play going on, and I should know what's going on. Somehow I've missed all the rehearsals. But it's happening, and there must be a script somewhere. And I can find neither my costume nor my script, and it just goes on and on. It's just
do you have
awful.
a nightmare? What is your recurrent nightmare?
It's hysterical. It started when I was doing Les Miserables, and it's still going on. And I'm always dressed in my Fantine costume with the wig, no matter how old I am. I'm still in the same costume and the same wig. And they've thrown me into the role in some production somewhere, and I don't know what any of the words are or what the music is, but I just find it so interesting that I'm always the same character at 30, at 40, at almost 50. I'm always the same character, and I guess it's because it was that show and that part that really that was my first big break in New York.
And how old were you when you did that?
31.
Oh, okay. So I just thought maybe you were much younger, but...
So, but do you find you have these anxiety dreams when you're having work anxiety, when you haven't worked? Or for me, it's usually centered around work anxiety, whether I'm not working or I am working, but it's not a personal...
That's another subject now. How do you keep finding work? Actually, men have this problem as well, but I mean, women also. As we get older, it's harder to find jobs, isn't it?
I'll be 60 in January, and I never thought I would ever be 60. But I didn't start working continuously, really, until I was 38. And so for me, it's been better as I've gotten older. I keep expecting it to stop and it may stop. 5 by 10 is quite likely to be my last job.
No,
but
I don't think so.
But I think what happens is you begin to work continuously for a long period of time, and then you don't.
Yes.
And it depends what part of your life.
Right. Well, that maybe you didn't start as the ingenue.
I would never, and would never even
So
when I was
maybe
the
that's
ingenue.
helpful if you don't start that way.
I'm now about as old as people have always thought I was.
Growing into yourself.
So finally, old enough to play whatever it is I'm supposed to be playing.
Now, you do so many film roles. You have a big film career as well as a stage career.
But I came into the business simply to work in theatre. I didn't have any dreams. I'm not very ambitious. In fact, I'm not ambitious at all. I've never sort of yearned to do anything that I haven't got to do. But I came into the business to work in theatre. I didn't think I'd ever be on television, or certainly wouldn't make films. My dad used to take me to the cinema once a week when I was a little girl, and the people I saw were from Mars. You know, they were from another planet. So, I mean, that was just these wonderful people, not anywhere I was ever going to be. But then when I eventually did do television, and then when I got to play Secrets and Lies, my agent said, "This is the best job you've ever been offered." I said, "Oh, this is fabulous. Let me read the script." He said, "Oh, Brenda, come in. Where have you been? There is no script. There never is a script." I said, "There's no script? What do you mean? What? Why does he want me?" And that's where I learnt most. Working from that has informed. Not Secrets and Lies, actually. I did one in 1980 called Grown Ups that informed everything else I've ever done because of the way he works and the way you build up the character from infancy. Mike Lee.
Oh, Mike
I'm
Lee.
sorry.
Sorry, Mike Lee.
And it's just a remarkable way of working. So I don't approach any job now without doing some Mike Lee work on it, i.e., how does the character feel at the top of page 1? Mm-hmm. You know, did she have a good night's sleep before page 1? Mm-hmm. You know, and where the character did. It doesn't necessarily show itself in the production or whatever it is I'm doing, but it informs me of how to find my way through.
A prior circumstance? Is
Yes,
that what it's called?
yes. A lot of it is contained, of course, in the script. It gives you lots of clues, but not all. And it's important for me to think a lot about that.
No, I didn't think
before.
film actors used that at all.
Oh, you have to even more.
Really?
Even when it's not. Mike, I mean, in Mike Lee's films, you develop the script together, but you're given, particularly if you don't have a big part in a movie. If you have a small part in a movie, you have to make it all up because the only thing that exists is that scene, and it needs to seem, you need to imply the whole life of the person before and the person afterward, and also give the illusion of having a relationship with whoever it is you're talking to, whom you probably met 10 minutes ago, and who might not actually be there when you shoot it.
Absolutely.
All of that makes sense for the theater. I can understand that clearer.
But in film and in television, in a way, because the writing isn't as rich,
In theatre,
you sort of have to bring more
to it,
more of somebody, you know, yourself or you know, whoever this person is meant to be. But it's for a different. It's a tiny concentrated moment.
And in theatre, of course, you have the luxury of rehearsal and playing the part chronologically. On film, you get barely any rehearsal, especially if you've got playing a small part. You don't get any. And so you've got to go away and find something for yourself.
And on television, if you do, I just did a series kept recurring on this television series for 3 years. And what's interesting about the way television works, series television works in the United States, is that the writers and the actors stay with the show, but the directors change. So the director's job in, so that in a way, the actors have the lore of continuing characters in themselves, because the people who come in to, you know, do the episode don't know these characters.
So
they know the
history.
story. Yeah. So you bring all the history with you. It's.
Have you found this to be true?
I've done so little film. I've done one film. It was terrible.
But in the theater,
I've done several of those.
in the theater? Do you have to do that work on how you felt before you arrive on the scene?
It depends on the character and how much is in the script and how much is not in the script. But I sometimes do a bio. Do you do bios at all?
Sometimes, yeah.
I write histories out. I retain things
That's the
better
same
if I
thing, yeah.
write it out. But I wanted to ask, because I've never had a big desire to do film, and I think it's because I don't think, for me, there's not much of a creative process because there's no real rehearsal there. And I guess I wanted to ask you, when you're working on films, where does the creative process come in for you if there's not, well, it's different, I guess, with a Mike Leigh film, but...
Oh, completely different, yeah.
Is it rewarding for you in a different way than it is when you're working in the theater?
Oh, it's so hard to describe because it's so out of it's not chronological. You have to do a lot of work on your own beforehand. If the director feels so disposed to talk to you about it, I think they're pretty careful in casting usually, and think you can probably come up with the goods, but that's obviously not enough. And the last few films I've done, on the day of shooting the scene, you get to talk about it and talk about what's needed and where the character is. But it's always the actor who's totally on top of that, and if the writer is around. But they're generally shoved to the background, which I think is such a shame, because it's so much easier to go straight to the horse's mouth and find out exactly the intention of, it's not how you say something, it's why you say something. And that's the most important thing. So I think the actor is pretty much has to do the great deal of the work on their own.
So the director is more important than the theater. Do you find that to be true? Kathleen, that your director is important.
In the theater.
In the theater.
Yeah. The director is the eye that you have to trust. You have to have somebody in the place of the audience. And, I mean, more than that, the idea of the whole. But it's like being a conductor, because you can't direct the play from inside. And you can't, the great trick is you can't make the other person that you're acting with do what you think they're supposed to be doing. And you can't respond as though they were doing what you think they were supposed to be doing. It takes such a long time to understand that you can't play both parts.
Are you directing
And so,
yourself?
no.
Anybody here interested in
never
directing?
I know so many good directors.
I would be interested in theatre.
Theatre
yes,
directing.
Yeah. And maybe that's maybe something I might do. But it's not a craving to do it. But I might consider it.
There are very few women directors. Aren't there? There are a few, but not
In the theater?
Yeah, in the theater. Don't you find you work mainly with men writers and men directors?
There are many more women writing for the theater
now
in America, but it depends on what level. It's true when there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money involved. Somehow it almost always ends up in men's hands. But you know more about this on Broadway. Are there women directing on Broadway, Randy?
Susan Stroman, we can name a few,
Yes,
but by and large.
And Julie Taymor, who's
But
now
Julie's-
doing
yeah.
film now. She's just disappeared into
not
film. Not many. Susan Schulman is doing Little Women now, but
So why is that? Why is that? Women have gone into so many other professions
I think
and so many.
that there's a strong bias toward men, and there's oddly a strong bias toward men in the creative part of the art, for writers. The people who have the money, for the most part, and this is in the commercial theater, it's not so true. It's much less true in the not-for-profit theater. In the not-for-profit theater, there are women in important positions all over the country, both as artistic directors and as writers and as directors. But in the commercial theater, it's still man's world in great part. And now, a lot of the commercial theater is controlled by enormous corporations, not even by people who are in the theater. And it's, you know, and there's a strong bias toward men.
Is that true in England as well?
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, I don't know where the money comes from.
No, but you have not worked for many women directors.
I've worked for some, yeah, especially in television and radio.
But not
in the theatre, there are some very good female directors, but I haven't worked for any yet. Deborah Warner, for one, she works a lot with Fiona Shaw at the National, and Jude Kelly, I think her name is. There are females.
And as far as parts, there are enough parts out there for you, Randy? I mean, when you get finished with this fiddler, do you go right away to something else? Or you have to start?
I have to start over again.
Start over again, looking.
Yeah, that's always depresses me. The constantly having to audition and constantly having to prove yourself over and over and over again. And the nice thing,
even at this point, when one assumes they've seen you in so many things.
sometimes I get offered to do things, but mostly I have to audition. It's always so wonderful when someone just calls up and says, "Would you like to do this?" I love that.
Is the competition very severe?
I don't even think of it as competition because it's so apples and oranges. They either want this person or they want me. You know, it's that type thing again.
And you can do so much, Randy, though, because you can.
Oh, thank you. But you know something? Here's the thing about the business. Even though I've done most of my work in musicals and I've done a couple of plays here and there, I still, with most of the casting directors in town, get labeled as a musical theater performer. And I think Bernie Telsey, God bless Bernie Telsey, who I think is the best casting director in town, because he just brings in good actors. He doesn't type anyone. He just brings in interesting, good actors. But they're not all like that.
Yeah.
I still get typed. I still have a hard time being seen for plays.
And Randy just was in an amazing
It's tough.
play last season, The Long Christmas Ride Home, which was
And that was because I think of Doug Abel, the artistic director, and
at the Vineyard Theater.
another one who's just a gem, just a gem. It's all about the work at that theater. It's just the most wonderful theater to work for. It's called the Vineyard Theater. It's downtown, not for profit, and it's just, there's no bull, you know. It's just about the work.
And they've been
down
having
there.
a wonderful couple of years. It's where Avenue Q started.
Right.
So and it's also where Three Tall Women came
Right.
from.
Oh,
So
yes.
you know, it does.
And do you have the next plan? Do you know what you're doing after 5?
I don't know. The only thing that I know that I'm doing is I'm doing the play Honor in Berkeley, actually, at the Berkeley Rat. I start rehearsal on the 19th of April and play till the 3rd of June because it's a wonderful play, and it probably, if it were to come to New York, it wouldn't probably come with me. So.
What do you mean?
Well, I think Corin Redgrave and Eileen Atkins did it in London very successfully last season, and there was some idea that Corin might come to Berkeley, but he's both being Lear and being Ken Tynan now in London, and starting a new political party. So he's not going to come. And I suspect that if it were to come to New York, it would come with Eileen Atkins and Corin, and not with me. And it was in New York with Jane Alexander and Bob Foxworth and Laura Linney, and wasn't so successful. And it's a wonderful, wonderful part, and I think, and it's a little bit like going home. And there is some possibility, though I don't know if it's going to happen, during the RNC. We did a reading of Electra at the Lincoln Center Library with Marissa Tomei and David Strathairn and Heather Tom, and there's some possibility that, and Lila Robbins, oh, Lila was wonderful, she was the chorus. So there's some possibility that that will have a limited run.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, how plays don't go from one city to another city sometimes, certainly not one country to another. Is it the humor is different, or the accent is different?
Well,
or?
sometimes it's interesting. Honor, everyone thinks of Honor as a British play, and it isn't. It's actually an Australian play. And I don't know why. I mean, that doesn't actually seem to be true. There's a strong Anglophilia bias, Anglophilic bias certainly in the commercial theater in New York, which is difficult sometimes makes it difficult for serious American writers. If you're a serious American writer, oddly, you're much more likely to get your play on in a commercial venue in London than you are in a commercial venue here, whereas all the most important British writers are produced, in this country on Broadway in commercial venues. So,
Brenda, you do a Southern accent. Speaking of going from one country to another, how were you cast as a Southern woman?
I know.
Did you have to audition with a Southern accent?
No, I didn't audition for this. Marcia Norman wanted me to play this part, and I was sent the script a couple of years ago, but it seemed like a pipe dream, and I couldn't figure why she would want me to play this. Anyway, she did, and they persisted and wanted me to come to do a reading here in New York. And when I came about 6 or 8 months ago they wanted to hear it out loud, I went all around America and Southern Australia with the accent. But they'd heard other things I had done, not with that particular accent, but that I could do them. And then Edie Falco became interested in playing the other part, and it suddenly all became like it was going to happen. And I said, oh, and I've worked hard on the accent with Deborah Hecht, and it hurt my face to start with because my voice comes from here, but hers is right there. And so, and I was using different muscles.
Oh,
And
really?
so for a while there,
Your nose hurt.
my face hurt.
Isn't that interesting? So you'd have to exercise that part of your face.
That's like I could feel the resonance right here.
Now, why are some people good at doing this and others aren't? Am I wrong that the British seem better at doing accents than Americans? Are we not so good at that?
I don't think that's true.
they are. I don't
Okay,
think
I'm glad to hear it. I
No.
think
On the
that-
contrary, I mean,
think
and for a long time, it was, everybody always said that we could do British accents and that British actors couldn't
do
American.
American.
accents. That's not true
It's just
any
you've
longer.
got a good ear. You can
do it.
It's like
do it.
singing.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
sort of you either have a thing for it or you don't.
Yeah.
And there are some you can do and some you can't.
Have you had to do accents?
Yeah, I've had to do. I do a really bad Cockney. I'm pretty good at doing like a Maggie Smith British accent, but I haven't had to do it a lot. But
And people assume you can do it right off.
Yeah.
You have to work
Study
at
it, yeah.
I mean, an actor might not be able to do it right now, but 3 weeks down the line, with tuition, they can do it. So, I couldn't do this accent when I started. And I'm still working on it, to tell you the truth. It's like anything else. You have to practice.
did you bring your accent home when you were preparing?
Well, I had to do a voiceover this week for a British commercial and on Satellite Link Up. And they said, you sound American. And I thought I was sounding perfectly English. And
Can I borrow some of it,
yeah,
please?
sure. And I had to do 27 takes before I could get rid of the American nuance.
Oh, gosh.
I could hear them thinking, oh, let's cut our losses and get somebody else.
He's infected.
Well, if you had to do anything else, is there anything else in life you would rather do than act?
Oh, this is like the James Lipton show.
Oh, too sorry. What do you like best then about what you are doing?
What do I like best about it? You know, it's what do I like best about it? This is going to sound so corny, but I really love living in an imaginary world under imaginary circumstances. I like
Not corny.
I like just getting immersed in the world that I'm in at the time. Right now I'm in Anatevka, and just that's the part that I like the most.
What
I think.
is it?
I
Like-
really enjoy the challenge of observing somebody, whether it's a real person or someone created, just to work out what makes them tick, what makes them get up in the morning, and just kind of really understanding somebody. And I think it's great being an actor, you know, because that's what we do. We observe people and try to understand them and make what's written on the page visible and believable. And it's a different challenge each time, because you can play one person, you've played one person well, doesn't mean you can play the next person well. It's a whole different challenge, and and that's what I like about it.
Thank you so much. That was so terrific. I enjoyed so much talking to you and learning so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thea.
We are coming to you from the City University of New York at their Graduate Center. Thank you so much.